My guest today is Teresa Bergen. Teresa is a freelance journalist and content creator working at the intersection of sustainability, health, fitness, vegan lifestyle, and travel. Her writing explores how these themes shape our experience of the world, with a particular focus on eco-conscious living and well-being-driven travel. Teresa is especially drawn to topics such as wildlife conservation, sobriety, and innovative approaches to making the planet more livable. Beyond her professional work, she's passionate about the outdoor activity, cultural exploration, and the places where history, art, and spirituality meet. She continues to collaborate with brands and publications aligned with a vegan and eco-focused storytelling. Welcome, Teresa. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks. I'm excited to be here.
You have a very interesting topic, which I'm passionate about talking about, and because I have I've worked my entire working life in hotels, and I've seen all sides of hospitality. And of course, one of the key factors for hotels is to make sure that we have the bar and the liquor trolleys very visible to the guest as soon as they arrive into the hotel to make sure they order a drink. But there are people in many people who actually are not comfortable with alcohol side of things. They want to have a great holiday, and I want to feel included. So a little bit about these topics, and you have written some book about it, and I want to touch on a few questions with you. You argue that hospitality unintentionally excludes non-drinkers. What are the most invisible forms of exclusion that hotel leaders still fail to recognize?
Well, first, let me say I usually talk to the non-drinkers themselves and the people that are questioning their relationship with alcohol. So it's really exciting for me to get to talk to your listenership who are, on the professional side in the hospitality industry. So thanks for that opportunity. And yeah, I think so I'm American, but this is the same in a lot of cultures that there's kind of the expectation that the norm is to drink rather than to not drink. So people usually aren't doing anything intentionally trying to exclude the non-drinker, but there's just kind of almost universal idea in many cultures that that is what's going to happen. So you see that there's always already wine glasses on the table, and there's usually mini bars, or if a hotel still has a mini bar, it's usually stocked with alcohol. And there's a lot of offhand comments from staff, encouraging people to drink. So all these things are just kind of reinforcing the idea that the norm is to be putting alcohol in our bodies. And also, I want to say up front, I'm not telling anybody that, drinking should be banned or that you shouldn't serve alcohol. I just want it to be there to be something good for everybody. And I want hotels to stay in business because I am a passionate traveler and I love a good hotel. So I'm not trying to put anyone out of business, and I'm not trying to tell you that, drinking is going to end.
So what was the inspiration for the Sober Travel Handbook, Navigating the World Alcohol-Free?
So I had a drinking problem really early on. I drank way too much from a super early age, like in my teens, and I quit drinking before I was even legally allowed to drink. So I quit drinking when I was only 20 because I was such a delinquent early on. And now I'm in my 50s. So this has given me my whole adult life to experience, a sober life, which has been good for me because I made a lot of bad decisions all the time when I was drinking. So I've had a nice adult life. I've been a travel writer for about 15 years, and I've traveled with a lot of people who are wine writers or craft beer writers, and yet again, a lot of hospitality, alcohol absolutely being the norm. So that kind of got in my way a lot of times. Like I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like sometimes the hosts were unhappy because I wasn't going to drink the drinks and write about the drinks. But then maybe, especially since the pandemic around then, there's been more of a rise in people questioning their relationship to alcohol and not drinking. And we have things like Dry January and Sober October and Sober Curious movement and mindful drinking. And I don't know if you know zebra striping, where people alternate between an alcohol drink and a non-alcohol drink. There's been more of all this, plus people just feeling like they need to quit because they started drinking way too much in the pandemic, and they're kind of like, uh-oh, this isn't good for my health. Um, and also an aging population. A lot of people are having more medications as they get older that don't work well with alcohol. So all of this kind of came together for me to think, okay, I have a lot of experience as a travel writer. I have a lot of experience as being a sober adult and traveling without alcohol. So maybe this is finally my moment where it can work to my advantage instead of being a liability. So I started to think about, is there a market for this book? I wasn't sure. I approached some publishers. And I also had to think, like, where is this book going to sit? Is it on a mental health shelf or is it on a travel shelf? And I very much wanted to be on a travel shelf. So I kind of conceptualized it as just another type of traveler. And for examples, I went to bookstore and I looked for other things that were, for a different type of traveler. So I found one for like digital nomads and Black women, and one was called like Young, Sexy, and Broke. So these were just like different lenses that you would view travel through. So that's what I was going for. And so I tried to make a book that was supportive but practical, really, really practical.
Very good. I mean, I think you mentioned about the aging population. There's a medication that you actually virtually stop drinking because you are not able to handle any longer. And from my personal experience, since I worked my entire career in hotels, and I also was producing a wine list for the hotel restaurants, I was used to drinking, but I was not a kind of co- compulsive drinking, but it was just part of my work I had to do. But I realized that I came a point in my life also that I simply didn't feel comfortable about drinking anymore. It wasn't as attractive as it was before as a profession, and so that somehow it was like that door closed on my life also. And so I can relate to anyone who has in his senior life actually made a decision that they will say that uh, when somebody want to have a welcome drink and they offer a drink and say, well, we have another option of what you have, and if they still insist, I say, well, and then you just make that white lie saying I'm on medication, so then they get you off the hook on that sign. So I can totally relate to that. But interesting. What did you find out about people who, when you made a research about this book, what were the sort of situations that they were in, and that where they felt that, well, how can I deal with this without being excluded when I go to a place?
Oh, there's so many different situations. I mean, I had a lot of situations that I've written about, and it might be like you're the person going along with a group to wine country for some reason. We have a lot of wine countries, and there's a lot of wine countries around the world, and groups of people are always going. There might be one or two who don't drink, or your friends having a bachelorette party. It's going to be drunk. Or I've been in a ton of situations where I'm at a conference and there's business networking, and so I've interviewed a ton of people about this, and so many people say, "Oh, but people drink a lot in my industry." It seems like that's really common. A lot of industries, people drink a lot. So, in the writing industry, I go to writing conferences, and there are a lot of drinkers, and sometimes you feel excluded because it seems like all the deals are being made at the bar.
Yeah.
And I'm sure hospitality, I mean, that's going to be a lot of drinking. A lot of industries, there's a lot of drinking. So there's plenty of opportunities to be in that kind of situation where people are trying to foist drinks on you. And I mean, usually they mean well. They're trying to include you,
Yeah.
and they think the normal thing is to drink. But it can be really uncomfortable. And especially like you were just saying, where you made the excuse that you're on medication. Like, why do we have to make an excuse? If somebody
Mm,
goes to a bar and they order a drink, does anyone ever say, "Why are you drinking?" No, I mean that doesn't happen. But if you order something that's not alcohol, then people want to know why. So um, yeah, I think that I would really like to see that change a bit.
sure. So if alcohol has historically been the social glue of hospitality, what replaces it without diminishing the experience or the guest experience or revenue, if you will?
Right. And those two questions can kind of go together. So, first, it is difficult for people sometimes because so many people rely on a drink or two to take off the edge off for their social anxiety. And there's a lot of anxious people today. It seems like now more than ever, people are getting these diagnoses of anxiety. So, that can be a problem. And I've been to a ton of cocktail parties where I don't drink and everyone else is drinking. And it's very uncomfortable. I don't like that standing around looking at someone. Usually the music is too loud. You're trying to hear them. It's not that fun. So I think other experiences where you do things together where you're doing something besides just standing and staring at someone and trying to think of something to say are key. And I think that this also can bring in revenue. So if you offer a craft night, like making something, craft night, or you go on a do something kind of wellness focused, like going on a walk to like a group walk in the neighborhood or a yoga class, even a yoga class with like tea afterwards to get people to talk some. And, you can charge for these different experiences. I don't know if it's going to be exactly the same amount as alcohol. I was talking to somebody recently at a winery here in Oregon who's a general manager, and she was telling me that the number of bottles that they've sold has been going down, but that their revenue has stayed similar because they've really been coming up with a lot of experiences to attract people to events. And she also said she's feeling it's like a more of a quality over quantity thing. So they're not selling as many bottles, but maybe they're selling some that are a little higher price point and better quality. So I'd say you want to come up with experiences and focus more on quality.
Yeah. The situation in the Nordic, in Finland, which we are historically known as heavy drinkers, having so 4 seasons and dark winters, so people have been known to drink too much, and the generation now, the younger generation, millennials, and aging like the baby boomers like me, uh, we find that there's an opportunity when we go to a restaurant that there's always that option of what we call the spirit-free wines.
Mhm.
And you always have the red wines, you have the white wines, and you don't feel out of place when you go for dinner. It's also understood that if you order that, you're still part of the party and so on, and can enjoy yourself. And like you, I go to these conferences, and I always look for that option that you're still a part of the party, but I totally reject the idea that you still have to feel uncomfortable because you have a choice that you don't drink anymore. But idea is that, and this is really because this is a hotel show for hoteliers. Maybe your some tips how hotels should rethink the arrival experience if the traditional welcome drink is no longer universally relevant.
Well, I still think a welcome drink is a lovely gesture, and I love a welcome drink, just one without alcohol. But you
Mm,
got to be prepared for your non-drinkers. Like, I'll give you an example. I was in San Antonio, Texas, the end of 2024, and I checked into this beautiful hotel. It was like, this sort of mission Texas style, very pretty, sort of Spanish mission style. Um, Gracious host, but as soon as I get in, they say, "Oh, how would you like a delicious margarita?" And I said, "Well, what do you have that doesn't have alcohol?" And they looked completely stumped. And then they tried to give me a plastic bottle of water, and I was completely confused because, I mean, first, I'm trying not to use drink from those single-use plastics, like, that's a
yeah.
big problem. And second, water is not equivalent to a delicious margarita. I used to love margaritas. It is not equivalent. But and then I was just all confused, and I was like, "Never mind, I'll just go to my hotel room," and I felt really uncomfortable. Uh,
Mm,
so, but that could have been so easy if they just had they're like, "How about a delicious margarita?" Or, "How about this equally delicious drink that doesn't have alcohol?" I mean, it'll be really easy to have 2 things ready to go. And that's all you have to do. It's not difficult. You can just have 2 options, and you wanna make sure it's not just a bottle of water or a Diet Coke. It's something that sounds nice, like, I don't know, a mint lemonade or a hibiscus water or something with an alcohol with a, alcohol-free spirit, something like that that's a little fancy. Maybe like non-alcoholic champagne or something.
yeah. I mean, you mentioned margarita. That's one of the easiest thing to do is to make it a non-alcoholic version of it. To make a little bit of effort, and you can make it. You have the use of the same glass. You put the salt rind,
Mhm.
and you can from the color looks exactly like a margarita. So there's no way that a professional hotel should be able to figure out that this is the way you can please the guest in many ways. It will either even any other drinks that you can take. Yeah,
Yeah, it's still delicious. Margarita has great flavors even without the alcohol.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm just thinking along the lines that, you know, hotels seems to be overestimating the financial risks of de-emphasizing alcohol and underestimating the long-term brand value of the industry. Do you have any comment about that? are hotels actually overestimating the financial risk? Should they reconsider and rethink this idea?
Well, it's a real fact. I mean, they might take a hit in that way and have to make that money up somewhere else. I realize
Yeah,
that. But first of all, um, it's just the reality is that a lot of people aren't drinking. And they're not going to drink just to make your profit margins better. So you have to figure out what you're going to do instead. And one thing I think you could play up a little bit more is the craft aspect of non alcoholic spirits and other ingredients that go into your food and your drinks that aren't alcohol. Because there's a real perception that non alcoholic drinks should cost less than alcoholic drinks because we put the value on the alcohol. But the alcohol itself is not really the expensive ingredient. It's more of the craft, the small batch, the artisan kind of thing. And that all goes into making the non alcoholic stuff too. So I think if you kind of pull that up, people are really into these whole maker stories on websites and everything. You got to play up the maker story of the non alcoholic maker. And especially if you have a local one, you want to pull that in and be like, whoa, this is our local person who's making this non alcoholic tequila out of this organic whatever, and it's pesticide free. And here's pictures of their beautiful farm. I mean, it's got to play up that story a little more, I think, and show people the value of the product beyond the alcohol.
yeah. You travel quite a bit, and so I'm interested to learn your views and which destinations or cultures are already ahead in designing compelling alcohol-free guest experiences, and why do you think that is?
Well, the obvious place that comes to mind is the Middle East, because
Yeah, sure.
so many people don't drink there. Um, And so people can look to them as leaders in it. I mean, they really come up with a lot of delicious drinks like mint lemonades, things like that, and fruit-based things. Not so much the non-alcoholic spirits because there's not so much a taste for it to start with, so they don't have to look to that to recreate anything. Um, but yeah, I'd say the way their places are designed, like their restaurants don't revolve around alcohol. There's not the signage everywhere. There's a lot of kind of idea of beauty in of the landscape and wellness and kind of heritage ingredients and experiences, kind of more spa and wellness side of things. I think you could play that up a little bit more and the Middle East, some of those countries do really well with that. Let me see, where else is good? Yeah, I'm not sure what the leaders are. I'd say more maybe places that have more of a nature focus
Yeah,
are you can look to them. Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I mean, part of my career was in Kuwait, and that's exactly what you mentioned. We had a great bartender, and basically we were serving all kinds of fresh fruit juices and having fruits that are of the highest quality. So
Mhm.
we were able to provide a fantastic experience, and that's quite normal that they were very creative in there. So I mean, people who are interested in this, they should take a lesson or two of how this is done in a place like Kuwait or uh, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or Qatar and so on, because they are ahead of the game in that aspect. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and then
But
one other thing I thought of is there's more sober bars popping up in the US, I'm sure other countries too.
okay.
So these are some places where they're coming up with some innovative drinks using a lot of the non-alcoholic spirits, either the replicant ones that are supposed to taste like the real spirits or just kind of interesting botanical mixtures that don't taste exactly like a real spirit. But it's important to look at them too because I love the fruit kind of based stuff, but they do tend to be sweet, and a lot of people don't want a sweet cocktail. So if
Yeah.
you look at some of these sober bars, like there's one called Hummingbird Heart in Ashland, Oregon. They make great drinks, and Sands Bar in Austin, Texas. There's a bunch of them, but if you were to study how their bartenders approached some of the drinks that weren't so sweet, because you want to offer those too.
Yeah. In hotels, what are the most common language or behavior mistakes staff make that subtly alienate the non-drinking guests? What have you noticed in your travels?
Well, there's first I'll give you an example, one that wasn't subtle, that just happened to me last week, or the week before. I was in Florida, and I was with a group of people, and it was lunchtime, and they were all ordering an alcohol drink at lunch, and I ordered club soda because there wasn't anything else on the menu except just like club soda and Coke. And the server looked at me in front of everybody really loud and says, "Don't you want something fun?" I was like, "No, I'm not a fun person. Just, don't you want a few shots of vodka in that?" And I thought, "Oh, that's such an example of terrible." I mean, she was a nice person, that was just norm there, I guess. But I'm like, "Oh, please train your staff not to do that." First of all, if there's one person that's ordering the non-alcoholic drink, they probably don't want to have that loudly emphasized to everybody
Yeah.
else. We
Yeah.
also don't appreciate it being implied that we are no fun because and I mean, it can be any reason, that someone's not drinking. They're in recovery because they had a problem, or they're on chemotherapy for cancer, or they're pregnant, or anything. Like you don't want to loudly call attention to them and put them on the spot and insult them by saying they're no fun. So that's a real obvious one. But then there's more subtle ones, and a couple that I come across all the time. And this is just in anybody, not just hospitality, but the idea of drinking as both a reward or a consolation. So how many times do you hear someone say, "Oh, it's been a hard day. You deserve a drink." And
Yeah.
that's like, a consolation for the hard day. Or as a reward, like, "Oh, you did a great job. Let me buy you a drink."
Hmm.
And and you can have them be like, "Okay, yeah, buy me a non-alcoholic drink." But the idea is always that we're going to have the alcohol as a reward or as a consolation. So those are
Yeah.
a little bit more subtle, and people don't even think about that if they haven't been if they haven't had experience themselves or with people close to them of non-drinking.
Yeah. So, what do you think? Your suggestions? How could, like, a hotel operators train the teams to read guests' preferences without making assumptions, especially around something as sensitive as alcohol?
I'd say present your drinks a bit more equally. Not like this is the fun drink and this isn't. It's like we have this wonderful drink. We have this wonderful drink. We have this wonderful drink. Put a good section on the menu too of non-alcoholic drinks. I see more and more people doing that these days, and I really appreciate that because you don't want to have them put the guest in the spot where they have to go up to the bartender, which I've done many times, and say, "What do you have that doesn't have alcohol?" You want to put them on a more even footing. And it's always probably gonna be a much smaller section, like, usually there's, 100 drinks with alcohol on the menu, and if you're lucky, maybe 4 without. But make sure you at least have those 4, and maybe add a couple more, that would be nice. And yeah, and just educate the staff a little bit more, remind them there's a lot of reasons people don't drink. They don't want to be put on the spot about it. Just try to normalize it, drinking and non-drinking. Some guests like this, some guests like that. Also, if you do an intake form, like how sometimes a hotel sends you something ahead of it's like, what kind of pillow do you want? Have you seen those? Like, yeah, what kind of pillow? Do you want this spiritual reading material? You could also put on that, are you a non-drinker? And if they say yes, they're a non-drinker. And I like to phrase it that way instead of like, do you not drink? Because it makes it look more normal. Yes, I am a
Yeah.
non-drinker. Then if you do have a mini bar, you could put non-alcoholic stuff in it. But you could also have a chance there to sell a little better because you could put some not just Coke, but you could put some more expensive, like ready to drink mocktails, canned things that people might actually pay for, and it really makes the non-drinking guest feel thought about and considered when you look if I was to open up the mini fridge and see there were like ready to drink mocktails or non-alcoholic wine, I'm like, whoa, they really thought about me. They really care. And that's a good feeling. And it gives you more chance to sell something. Because if I see a fridge full of alcohol, I'm like, like they do with vampires. I'm like, no, stay away. I'm not going to go to that part of the room. So you want to invite people to go in there and drink something they're going to like and pay you for it.
Yeah. In the hotels, particularly the way we are structuring our profit and loss, there is the revenue, and then you have food, and then you have a beverage. Obviously, beverage uh, implies that that's alcohol, and we always look at uh, looking at those lines very carefully and looking for how we can improve what area and so on. But because there's a shift clearly that you have also noticed that there is also a generation that actually don't care for alcohol drinks, but they enjoy drinking all kinds of coffee drinks, all kinds of fresh juices, or matcha, or there are many things that you can have. So what would you tell sort of that hotel owner who believes alcohol is still essential to profitability? What are they missing strategically?
I wouldn't argue with them because they know their business better than I do, so I'm not gonna tell them, "No, you're imagining that's important," but I would just say you have people on the younger end of the spectrum that aren't drinking, you have people on the older end of the spectrum that aren't drinking or aren't drinking as much, so you just gotta think of a way around it.
Sure.
You still gotta
Yeah.
supply those people with alcohol who want it, but maybe try to maybe play up, like, some whole wellness menu. You can charge a lot for the fresh squeezed juices and the supplements and the coffee drinks and all that. Also, I was gonna look over here. I have some notes over here. Um, I wanted to look really quick. I was talking to someone, I heard someone speak recently who who's a president of a wine company here who has a line of non-alcoholic spirits, and he was talking about he did a lot of research on people who quit drinking wine recently and or who don't drink, and he found that a lot of them were under 35, and he called them purity drinkers, and they were just people who were really concerned with things like it has to be organic, non-GMO, pesticide free. So you could also, if you're trying to reach those younger people, you could also play up those kind of aspects. And
Sure.
those things
Sure.
cost more, the non-GMO, the certified organic, the pesticide free.
Absolutely. Yeah. I saw on your website that you're involved with the Wellness Tourism Association. Am I correct?
Yeah, I haven't done so much with them recently, but a little bit. And also, I just went to the Global Wellness Summit last year in Dubai, which is a really huge event with with wellness experts from all over the world.
Yeah. Could you tell, I mean, from what you know about the Wellness Tourism Association, because it could be a good tip for hoteliers to actually to look into this, being involved and also find a way to reach a segment of customers that they're not attracting at the moment.
Yeah, you could contact them and see what's on their website and what they're promoting. And also, I'd say the Global Wellness Institute is a really interesting entity because
Okay.
they do research on all different sectors of wellness tourism, and I think you can get a lot of their information free if you look online. Global Wellness Institute, they do a lot of data collection and have some top notch researchers. And the wellness is huge. I mean, it's also not only is it huge in money, but it's an incredible span of offerings, which are a little hard to get my head around. So I kind of put it on a spectrum from the kind of simple stuff, which is more what I'm into, like, exercise. I'm into the vegan diet, nature, to all the way up to the really, really kind of medical longevity biohacking, like your vacation involves getting a bunch of tests and test results and stuff, which I'm not so much into, but that's part of the wellness thing too. So you have a big span of offerings from the simple and natural to the medical model. And then,
Okay.
you're gonna have to look you have to look at your own hotel or your own property and figure out what's gonna work and what's gonna, draw your guests because it's a
Yeah.
really lot of variation in the wellness.
Yeah. Just keep on testing, try new things and see what works. And then if it works, then expand on it. If it doesn't work, try something else. So there's always a lot of things you can do for sure.
Yeah, and some of
So
them are very expensive, so you wanna look at that research first and try to figure out if you really
yeah.
wanna go into the more expensive parts of it, like the cryo chamber or whatever, where your guests are gonna, freeze for wellness for a few minutes.
Well, all you have to do to come to Finland in December and January, and it doesn't cost anything.
That's right, that's on the natural end if you go to Finland in January.
It's all organic.
Yeah, beautiful.
So I think we're now reaching the end of this part of the episode, and I have two more questions for you before we move to the final segment off the mic. One question that I like to ask all my guests, besides what we have talked about, what other trends do you see happening in hospitality that hoteliers should take note of?
Hmm. I'm gonna stick with the wellness on this one. I think,
Okay.
I see more, like, yoga mats in the rooms, which is nice. Things like encouraging, like, having a good gym, having the free bikes for use. So, I like these trends where it focuses on the kinda natural, healthy things, getting some exercise or more plant-based foods on the menu in the hotel restaurant. Although sometimes it's kind of funny, like, sometimes it feels like it's just a token thing, like, they haven't really thought about it. Like, the other day, I was checking into a hotel in, I think it was another hotel in Florida that I was at, and the person was showing me around the room. It was a really nice hotel, really nice room, and he's like, "And here in your closet, we have a yoga mat and a 5-pound weight." I was like, "One I said, "1 5-pound weight? What am I gonna do with 1 5-pound weight?" And he's like, I think there might be another down the hall if you want it." It's like it was really funny. It was like a token thing, like, "We're gonna put a weight in the room," but, like, what do you do with 1 5-pound weight? So, you wanna I think, offer these wellness things, but think a little bit. And, there's so many times too where I think, if you're designing a hotel, you really should have to stay in that hotel room for a few nights.
Yes, sure. Very good. So lastly, if people are interested to find out more about your activities, because you are very active in publishing articles and books and so on, how can they reach you? What is the best way to connect with you?
You can look at my website, which is just my name, teresabergen.com. That's probably the best way. Or Google me and lots of weird stuff will pop up.
Good. Okay. Well, that's the end of this segment. And now we go to something called Off the Mic. Now, Off the Mic is basically where I invite all my guests to join in for more of a lighthearted conversation. And I mean, our conversation has been lighthearted, even though the topic has been serious. But this is going to be a little bit of different angle. So it's more like a funny and quirky questions. So are you ready to start with the first question?
I don't know. You're scaring me, Sam-Erik. I'll do my best.
If your professional life had a theme song, would it be more wildlife documentary or yoga retreat with unexpected plot twists?
Yoga retreat with unexpected plot twists.
Okay. You cover sobriety, sustainability, and vegan travel. What's the hardest temptation you face on assignment? Dessert menus, hotel minibars, or over-enthusiastic cheese platters?
Oh, for me, it's when somebody leaves chocolate in my hotel room. And sometimes I do slip up on the vegan part when I had a really long day and I'm really tired and I come back to the hotel room and there's some kind of chocolate that's not vegan. Because some chocolate is vegan, but a lot isn't. And one time in Mazatlan, I ate an entire, over the course of a few days, I ate an entire white chocolate golf cart. It was like this big and it was shaped like a golf cart. And I ate that in my room. So yeah, I do have some vegan slips around chocolate in hotel rooms.
Well, you have another one here who loves chocolate, so I know what you talk about.
You'd eat that golf
So,
cart too, huh?
if you had to survive a week in a luxury hotel that was accidentally designed against your values, what's the first thing you redesign with mild urgency?
I'd put all the alcohol in the hall, and I have done this many times. If someone gives me, like, welcome bottles of alcohol, I just stuck them in the hall right away because I don't wanna see
Yeah,
them. And then
yeah.
it's funny, other people are very excited to find them. And one time I was at a travel writer conference, and somebody mentioned later, they're like, "You wouldn't believe my luck. I was walking down the hall, and I found a bottle of whiskey." I'm thinking, "Oh, yeah, that was mine."
Very good. If you write about eco-conscious travel, what's the most eco hotel claim you seen that made you quietly raise one eyebrow?
Oh, the claim or, like, I didn't believe it?
Claim, yeah.
Or oh, um I'm not sure what the claim is, but I'll tell you one that impressed me that they actually did. It wasn't just a claim. Was I stayed at this place called Rios Lodge in Costa Rica, where they didn't have any roads, so they used the very fuel conscious way of importing everything, which was on a raft, on a river raft, and they even brought this enormous, like a whole kitchen in this enormous range on this raft. So I thought that was pretty mind blowing eco that they had to transport every and all the building materials. They built a whole rainforest lodge transporting stuff on rafts.
Yeah. I have one thing about which relates to this eco claim of a hotel, and it's still very popular. Where they ask you, well, what is you claim your hotel is sustainable, you promote sustainability, and you're an eco hotel. Can you give an example of that? Well, we don't use plastic straws anymore. Then after that, you don't get the second example, but that's very common. They like to pull out this no plastic straws anymore. So I saw one hotel actually they're giving a metal straw that you can take with you home. And that is, in fact, I have a couple of those, which I once in a while take with me when I go somewhere, so I can have that kind of sanitized for my own use.
Those things terrify me. I always think I'm gonna poke my eye out with them, so I just drink from the side of the cup.
Yeah. If animals could review your travel articles, what species would be your toughest critic, and why do I suspect could be maybe a goat even?
Oh, I'd say my own cat. I have a lovely black cat, and he thinks I'm ridiculous. I have a bank account, I have thumbs, and I still don't just go get a hamburger.
You love cemeteries and churches for their history and spirituality. What's the most unexpected, funny thing you ever discovered in one of those places?
One time I was at a cemetery just here locally in Portland, Oregon, and there was this, young woman, and she was bent over a gravestone, and she was, like, scraping moss off, and I thought, "Oh, she's just cleaning the gravestone." But then she was putting it in a bag, and my curiosity just got the better of me, and it wasn't any of my business, but then I went and I asked her, I was like, "What are you doing with that moss?" And she said, "Oh, I'm taking it home to put in the terrarium for my" she had some kind of, like, I think it was called, like, a bumblebee boa or something, with some real specific kind of snake, and so she went to the cemetery to gather moss. That was funny.
Yeah. If wellness travel had a villain, what would its superpower be? Forcing green juice on everyone or scheduling sunrise yoga at impossible hours?
Oh, what would it be? What is the worst one? Oh, you know what? I went to a one recently, and this I had to fight this villain. It was one that, tried to keep me from drinking coffee. I had it was at a yoga, like an ashram in the Bahamas, and, I did smuggle in my own coffee because that was a villain I just couldn't deal with. I mean, look, I'm vegan, I don't drink, I have to have a couple vices, and for me, it's caffeine and sugar.
Sure, sure. What's your personal, this is supposed to be relaxing, but actually slightly chaotic travel moment?
Slightly chaotic?
Yeah,
Oh, well, maybe when I went to India, because people have this idea of India as being, like, not everybody, but some of the people that I knew in sort of the yoga world in Portland, they're like, "Oh, it's gonna be so peaceful." And I'm thinking, I don't know, it's a pretty crowded country with a lot of people without very much money. And of course it was, completely chaotic and people
yeah,
everywhere and really crazy. A beautiful country, not relaxing. At least that's where I was.
yeah. I can relate to that from my visits also. You know, if you could replace one standard hotel feature with something completely bizarre but meaningful, what would it be?
One standard hotel. Oh, well, I don't know if this is bizarre. But I hate this trend of showers only, and I know that's maybe not so eco-friendly for the water, but I love a bathtub, so I would have a gorgeous clawfoot bathtub. It doesn't have to be a huge one that, like a huge jacuzzi tub that takes up that much water, but I would replace all those. I kinda hate showers, and every time I go into one and they always seem to be designed terribly in the hotels where you turn the water on and it goes on your head. Like, I don't usually wanna wash my hair when I go in the shower, and I wash my hair all the time, but the shower wants to wash my hair, and usually you have to walk through it and, it's freezing you or it's burning you. Yeah, I would get rid of all those stupid showers, and I would have a nice old-fashioned clawfoot bathtub.
Very good. So, when you say you're a journalist covering sustainability and travel, what's the most common reaction? Confusion, admiration, or people just offering you a salad?
Oh, I think people don't think that's very unusual these
Yeah,
days. It's a lot of people are interested in sustainability, so, um, they're probably just like, "Yeah, that's cool, whatever."
yeah, that's good. So when you have, maybe a final question is that you've been traveling, maybe have a long trip, and what's the single most thing in terms of food that you look forward to when you get back home, which is in the refrigerator?
Oh, which is in the refrigerator. Probably making my own coffee with my own unsweetened soy milk.
Very good. Okay. Well, thanks, Teresa, for bearing with me on these questions. And
Well, I felt like I was on a quiz show. Do I win a prize?
yeah, you win the first prize.
All right. Thanks so much. That was lots of fun.
Thank you for tuning in to the Social Hotelier. If you enjoy the episode, please take a moment to leave us a review, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. We have an incredible lineup of guests coming your way, so stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations. Until next time, take care and keep exploring. Okay.